February 14th, 1945, Camp Aliceville, Alabama. The pain is sharp, specific. It bites into the skin just above the right hip bone. Pinch. Hildegard winces. She shifts in the wooden chair, trying to find a position that doesn't hurt. She fails. Every time she sits, the waistband of her gray Luftwaffe auxiliary skirt acts like a garrote, slicing into her midsection. Hildegard is 20 years old. 6 months ago, she was a jagged collection of elbows and knees, a scarecrow figure manning a searchlight in Essen. Now, she sits in the sterile, white-walled waiting room of the camp infirmary. She is terrified. She looks at her hands. They are puffy. She touches her face. It feels round, swollen. It is the dropsy, she thinks. The hunger edema. Everyone in the Reich knows about the edema. When the body starts to digest itself, it fills with water. You swell up before you die. It is the last stage. She is dying. Here, in this land of sunshine and strange, drawling accents, she is finally dying. The door opens. "Next," says the medic. Hildegard walks in. She holds her breath, trying to suck in her stomach to relieve the pressure of the skirt. It doesn't work. The button strains. Captain Miller, the camp doctor, is sitting at his desk. He's not looking at X-rays. He's not looking at death certificates. He's peeling the wrapper off a Baby Ruth candy bar. The smell of chocolate and roasted peanuts fills the small room, overpowering the smell of antiseptic. "What's the trouble, Hilda?" Miller asks, taking a bite. A string of caramel connects the bar to his lip. "It hurts, doctor," Hildegard whispers in broken English. She points to her waist. "It hurts when I sit. My stomach. It is swelling. I think it is the water sickness." Miller stops chewing. He looks at her. He looks at her rosy cheeks. He looks at the way the gray wool of her uniform, a uniform designed for a starving nation, is stretched tight across her hips. He stands up. He walks over to her. He doesn't check her pulse. He doesn't check her eyes. He reaches out and taps the button of her skirt. Ping. The button is holding on for dear life. Miller laughs. It is a deep, chesty laugh that shakes the room. "You don't have the water sickness, honey," he says. He walks back to his desk, opens a drawer, and pulls out something that looks like an instrument of torture. A sewing kit. "You have the American sickness," he says, tossing the kit to her. "You're getting fat." Hildegard stares at the sewing kit. Fat. The word lands like a slap. In Germany, fat was a memory. Fat was something Goering was. Fat was impossible. She looks down at her waist. The pain isn't disease. The pain is butter. The pain is potatoes. The pain is peace. She sits down on the examination stool. The skirt cuts into her again. And for the first time in her life, the pain makes her want to cry. Not because she is dying, but because she is the only person in her family who isn't. To understand why a tight skirt is a tragedy, we must go back to the time when nothing fit. We must go back to the world of the Skeleton Army. August 1944, the Ruhr Valley, Germany. The Searchlight Battery 44 was not a place for men. The men were dead, or in Russia, or in France. The battery was run by children. Hildegard was 19 then, but she looked 12. Her uniform, the Luftwaffenhelferin gray, was a size too big when she got it. Now, 6 months later, it was a tent. She had to use a piece of rope to keep the skirt up. When she walked, the skirt swished around her legs, empty and hollow. The diet of the Searchlight Battery was a study in minimalism. Breakfast, Muckefuck, ersatz coffee, and a slice of bread that was 40% sawdust. Lunch, soup, usually turnip. Sometimes, if the supply trucks from the east got through, a potato. Dinner. The Führer package, a cigarette and a vitamin tablet. The vitamin gives you energy, the Oberführerin, senior leader, said. The cigarette kills the appetite. It was a perfect system, a biological loop designed to extract labor from a dying body. Hildegard didn't feel hunger anymore. Hunger is a sharp pain. This was different. This was a dull, gray fog that lived in her head. She moved slowly, conserving energy. When she sat on the wooden bench in the barracks, her bones hit the wood directly. There was no cushion, no fat. It hurts when I sit, she would say then. But that was the pain of bone grinding against board. And then there was the propaganda. The radio was their only connection to the world, and the radio was screaming about the monsters coming from the West. The Americans are gluttons, Goebbels sneered. They are a plutocracy of beef-eaters. They do not know sacrifice. They will come here, and they will eat everything. They will eat your land. They will eat your soul. Hildegard imagined the Americans as giant, slobbering ogres. She imagined them sitting on mountains of stolen food, tearing meat from the bone with their teeth, while German children watched. She feared them, but in the darkest part of her mind, the part she didn't talk about, she also envied them. She dreamed of the ogres. She dreamed of what they were eating. The capture, November 1944, the Aachen Gap. The capture was anticlimactic. The shellfire stopped. The noise stopped. Hildegard crawled out of the bunker. A jeep was parked on the road. 4 men. They weren't ogres. They were bored. One of them was eating an apple. Crunch. The sound echoed in the valley. Hildegard watched the juice run down his chin. He wiped it away with a gloved hand. He threw the core with fruit still on it, into the mud. Hildegard stared at the core. In her mind, she calculated the calories. 30. 40. He had just thrown away 40 calories. He had thrown away a morning's worth of energy. That was the moment the weapon was fired. Not a bullet. An apple core. It hit her harder than shrapnel. It told her, instantly and undeniably, that the war was lost. You cannot win against people who throw away food. Camp Aliceville, Alabama, January 1945. The train ride to the camp was a hallucination. Hildegard sat on the plush velvet seat. She touched it. Soft. She leaned her head back against the cushion. Soft. Everything in America was soft. The seats, the suspension of the trucks, the toilet paper. In Germany, the toilet paper was abrasive, wood pulp sheets. Here, it was white tissue. But the real shock was the mess hall. Hildegard walked into the large wooden building. It smelled of grease. Not the rancid machine grease of the flak towers, but animal grease. Bacon grease. It hung in the air, heavy and intoxicating. She took a metal tray. The serving line was a conveyor belt of excess, a scoop of yellow powder, scrambled eggs, a slab of pink meat, ham, a mound of white fluff, potatoes, a ladle of brown liquid, gravy, and the bread, the white, crustless clouds of Wonder Bread. Hildegard sat down. The tray was heavy. She looked at the food. Panic set in. It is too much. Her stomach, shrunken to the size of a tennis ball, clenched in protest. "Eat!" Helga, the girl next to her, whispered. "Eat before they take it back. It is a trick. They will film us eating, then take it away." Hildegard picked up a fork. She took a bite of the eggs. They were salty. Oily. Her mouth flooded. She swallowed. The food hit her stomach like a lead weight. She felt dizzy. The rush of blood to the digestive system, a system that had been dormant for months, made her lightheaded. She ate the ham. It required chewing. Real muscle fibers. She ate the bread. It dissolved into sugar. She ate until she was in physical pain. Her stomach was distended. It pushed against her ribs. She looked down at her tray. She had only eaten half. She looked around. A guard was walking by. He carried a garbage can. "Finished, ladies." He stopped at the table. He picked up a tray from a girl who had left her potatoes. Bang. He hit the tray against the side of the can. The potatoes fell into the trash. Hildegard gasped. The sound was physical. Bang. More food. Bang. More. She stared into the can. It was a slurry of discarded energy. She wanted to dive into it. She wanted to scoop it out with her hands. "Do you know what that is?" She wanted to scream. "That is life. That is my mother's life. That is my brother's life." But she said nothing. She sat there, full to the point of nausea, watching the ritual of waste. The show was over, but the tell was just beginning. This was how they broke you. They didn't beat you. They fed you until you burst, and then they showed you how little it mattered to them. You were fighting for crumbs. They were fighting for leftovers. The transformation. Weeks passed. The biological machine is efficient. Given fuel, it rebuilds. Hildegard's body began to change. First, the gray pallor vanished. Her skin turned pink. Then the hair. It stopped falling out. It grew shiny. Then the padding. It happened slowly. Then all at once. The daily intake of 3,000 to 4,000 calories. Eggs, milk, beef, chocolate, peanut butter had nowhere to go. Hildegard wasn't marching. She wasn't manning a searchlight. She was sitting in a barracks, sewing, reading, and learning English. The energy stored itself. The anchor object, the skirt. It started with the blouse. One morning, Hildegard buttoned her uniform blouse. The fabric pulled tight across her chest. Did it shrink in the wash? She wanted to know. She tugged at it. No, the fabric was the same. She was different. She looked in the small mirror. Her collarbones, once sharp ridges that could hold a cup of water, were gone. They were buried under a layer of soft flesh. Then the skirt. The rope she used as a belt was no longer needed. The waistband, which used to hang 3 inches from her skin, now touched it. A week later, it hugged it. A week after that, it squeezed it. The ice cream social. The tipping point was the ice cream. Sunday afternoon. The camp commander announced a social, ice cream. Hildegard had heard of it. Frozen custard. She stood in line. The scoop was round. Perfect. Vanilla. She licked it. It was cold. Sweet. Creamy. It was the taste of pure, unadulterated childhood. It melted on her tongue, bypassing the need for digestion, going straight to the blood sugar. She ate 1 scoop. "Want another, hun?" the server asked. Hildegard nodded. She ate 2. She sat on the grass, licking the spoon. She felt a pop. Check. She looked down. The top button of her skirt. The hook and eye closure. It had given up. The waistband had surrendered to the vanilla. Hildegard panicked. She tried to pull the fabric together. It wouldn't meet. There was a gap. An inch of gap. She looked at the gap. That inch was the distance between the Third Reich and the United States. That inch was the defeat. She stood up to go to the barracks to fix it. She couldn't breathe. The skirt was a vice. It hurts, she thought. But it wasn't the sharp pain of shrapnel. It was the dull, throbbing pain of expansion. She walked back to her bunk, holding her skirt up with her hand, because it would not button. She felt heavy. Not heavy with burden, heavy with matter. She was becoming substantial. She was becoming American. Try 1945. The letter from home arrived. Hildegard sat on her bed, her soft, comfortable bed, and opened it. Her mother's handwriting was shaky. "We are boiling the wallpaper," the letter said. "To get the starch from the glue, it makes a soup. We found a dead horse on the road yesterday. It was gone in 10 minutes. I got a piece of the liver." Hildegard put the letter down. She looked at her side table. A half-eaten bag of potato chips. A Hershey bar. She looked at her own lap. Her thighs spread out against the mattress. They were thick, solid. She pinched the flesh of her leg. It was real. It wasn't water. It was fat. She was wearing the calories that could have saved her mother. This was the shift. The gratitude turned into self-loathing. She felt like a traitor. Every time she ate, she felt she was stealing from her family. But she couldn't stop. The food was there. It was everywhere. And the hunger, the deep, cellular memory of hunger, pushed her to eat. "Eat now," the lizard brain said. Winter is coming. But winter never came in Alabama. Only more spring. Only more ham. She tried to alter her uniform. She sat with the sewing kit Captain Miller gave her. She cut the side seams of the skirt. She added a panel of fabric, an old gray sock she cut up. It was a patch, a badge of shame. The fat patch. She sewed it in. The skirt fit again. But the patch was visible. Every time she walked, the patch flashed. It said, "I am eating." It said, "I am failing my people." She went to the camp fence. She looked out at the Alabama woods. She saw a squirrel. In Germany, we would eat that, she thought. Here, the Americans fed peanuts to the squirrels. She watched a guard toss a peanut to the rodent. She touched her patched skirt. She realized she was the squirrel. She was the pet. Fattened up. Tamed. She wasn't a soldier anymore. You can't be a soldier with a 26-inch waist that used to be a 22. The war had left her body. June 1946. Repatriation. The day came to leave. Hildegard packed her bag. She put on her uniform. It was tight again, even with the patch. She had grown another size. She looked in the mirror. The girl who stared back was a stranger. Round cheeks, bright eyes, strong arms. She looked healthy. She looked like a dairymaid from a propaganda poster, but she was a prisoner returning to a graveyard. She walked to the gate. Sergeant Miller, no relation to the doctor, was there. "Going home, Hilda?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Gonna miss the chow?" Hildegard looked at him. "I will miss." She paused. She touched the waistband of her skirt. It was digging in, leaving a red mark she knew would itch later. "I will miss the pain," she said. He looked confused. "The pain?" "The pain of sitting," she said. "The pain of having too much." The legacy. To WWII. Munich. Hildegard is 81. She's sitting in her living room. The furniture is heavy, German oak. The chairs are cushioned, thick velvet cushions. She sits down. She sighs. She reaches for a cookie on the table, a butter cookie. She eats it. She looks at her waist. She is soft. She has been soft for 60 years. She never went back to the skeleton army. After the war, during the famine of 47, she survived because she had the American Reserve. The fat she stored in Alabama kept her alive when there was no bread in Munich. The tight skirt saved her life. She opens a drawer in the sidebar. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, is a gray scrap of wool. The patch. The fat patch from her skirt. She touches it. It is rough. It is the only souvenir she kept. She doesn't keep medals. She keeps the patch. Because it reminds her of the strangest weapon of the war, the weapon that didn't kill her, the weapon that made it hurt to sit, the weapon of mercy. Over 370,000 German POWs were held in the United States. They were fed the same rations as American soldiers, 3,500 plus calories a day. When they returned to Germany, many were unrecognizable to their families because of their health. The American sickness was the only illness in the war with a 0% mortality rate.